And welcome to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us. Sorry for the absence of the last couple of days anyway, but Friday lost my voice completely anyway, but been building up the strength, but it's finally back to its full 100% capacity today. And so wanted to get into a nice long live with you guys, discuss all that's happening around the world of baseball. We missed a lot of headlines. If you paid any attention over the past few days, I put out several videos out. I did have enough voice anyway to be able to get a couple of minutes of video out. And then have to take a break and rest my voice. But it's back, and we'll get back to doing this every single day. Even with the holiday, we'll still have it every single night for you guys. We do daily updates for you guys on what's happening around the world of baseball. Weekdays for you Monday through Friday, usually around 8, 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock at night. We'll give you guys an update on what's going on. And since we missed some time with you guys, we thought we'd run down quite a list of things that's already gone down. But if you've missed some of the videos we put out, you're more than welcome to hit that subscribe button and check out what we've been talking about. We also cover the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL, so don't miss out on any of your favorite teams. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're up to 923 right now, inching ever so closer to that 1,000 subscriber goal. So if you're just joining us, we really would appreciate it. Thank you in advance. But without further ado, let's get right into some of the biggest headlines. Today we saw Aaron Judge meet with the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Giants are considered one of the top favorites for Aaron Judge outside of the Yankees, of course. Curious to see the fit there, just because I want to see if the Giants are really willing to invest the level of money that they're going to have to pry him away from New York. I haven't heard yet as far as the tenor of those conversations, how receptive Judge was to it. I'm sure Judge is just wanting to get a feel for the city, get an idea for what it'd be like playing for the Giants. I think this is more the information gathering stage of it. Now remember, the Yankees have already offered him multiple contracts since the conclusion of the 2022 season. We're before the winter meetings anyway. We're just before Thanksgiving as well. Don't expect any big signing here for Aaron Judge. Don't expect a surprise while you're eating your turkey on Thanksgiving that Aaron Judge is signed with San Francisco. This is strictly a fact-finding process for Aaron Judge. I think he wants to get a feel for, one, what it'd be like playing in San Francisco. Two, what are the team, what's the front office, what's the coaching structure going to be like if I decide to play for the San Francisco Giants. Three, all the other teams that are still in the mix, most notably the Los Angeles Dodgers, what are their options looking like? The rotation of the Dodgers, do they end up going and getting a guy like Justin Verlander? Are they able to bring in a guy like Xander Bogaerts or Carlos Correa to play shortstop? Are they going to have a better team, more well-rounded team, rather than just the top-heavy team that they had last year that wasn't able to get to the World Series? And of course, for the New York Yankees, are they going to continue to spend after bringing back Aaron Judge? Now just remember, they brought back Anthony Rizzo. They still are going to have a young guy playing shortstop for them. They brought back IKF on a one-year, $6 million deal. We haven't made a video about that, but we will later on this week. But there's a lot of question marks surrounding Aaron Judge, and he wants to fill in as many of those blanks as he can before he makes his decision. Now, as far as what we expect that contract to be, well, apparently the ask has been right around 8 years and $40 million a year. I'm expecting that market to go completely through the roof, essentially because of years. I think Aaron Judge is going to realize he's going to have all of these teams more than willing to give him 8 years, 40. I think the separator among these teams is probably who's going to give him that 10th year. That's why we predicted here that it's going to probably end up somewhere at that $40 million mark, at least 8 years. But I think it's going to end up at 10 years total. So $40 million times 10, that's a $400 million contract for Aaron Judge. And if I'm the Giants, he's the aircraft carrier that team has never had. I mean, Buster Posey, as great as he was never as the type of hitter that Aaron Judge is right now, and that he's continuing to grow into being. Now remember, Aaron Judge is 31 years old, developed kind of a late bloomer anyway for the New York Yankees. That's why he's hitting free agency at a little bit older age anyway. But he's still got a lot of juice left in him. I'm expecting at least another 7 effective years for him. Now, if you get 8, 9, and 10 years anyway, if you get a championship out of it, you could make the argument it was worth it. Now, for the Yankees, an organization that's all about championships, is it worth one championship to bring back Aaron Judge? I would say yes at this point, just because what's their alternative? They don't have another Aaron Judge to bring back in. It's not like they can go to the Los Angeles Angels, who are trying to rebuild on the fly and get a competitive team out there and possibly make a shot at a wild card run so that they don't lose Shohei Ohtani in free agency next year for nothing. That's probably their one option out there. Outside of that, I just don't see the way they're going to be able to fill in the shoes of a guy like Aaron Judge. Now remember, last year with Aaron Judge, all the pieces that they already had, they weren't able to get the World Series. They just continued to struggle to get past the Houston Astros. They were swept, I believe. But just looking at that team, let's just say they lose Aaron Judge. What's their solution? They go with the international free agent in Yoshida. They go with Andrew Benintendi in the outfield. They make some type of push for Brandon Nimmo. Those players are significantly lower value than Aaron Judge. And if I'm the Yankees fan, it's Aaron Judge or bust for me. If Aaron Judge goes anywhere else, I think Brian Cashman's job is over in New York. He's had a really great run there, but they haven't won a championship in years. And the Yankees are about championships, and it's time to pay the piper. Somebody's got to do it. And if you lose Aaron Judge, your aircraft carrier on your roster right now, well, was on your roster anyway, and could be on somebody else's, like the Giants or the Dodgers, that's quite a blow to your organization. I don't think he's going to be able to recover from that. Welcome in, Giants fan. Appreciate you coming back anyway. Judge reportedly meeting with Giants and Yankees, gave him an offer. Yep, that's kind of what we just went over anyway. Got 10 of you guys with us right now. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. But let's kind of get into some of the other headlines. As we mentioned, Aaron Judge is pretty much going to dominate all the headlines, at least until he signs that deal. I'm expecting it to happen around the winter meetings. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We will keep you guys updated on everything that's happening in those negotiations. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with us here at the Upside, one site that you guys can kind of keep track of things is that MLBTradeRumors.com. That way they can keep you up, in print as to what's going on. But if you want to make sure you hit that subscribe button, that way we can keep you guys updated as well through videos as well. 1 minute short little videos. That way you don't have to try to scan through the entire site to figure out what's going on with your team. One note that I don't think I've seen on here yet anyway is that the Texas Rangers are talking with Mike Maddox to possibly bring him in as their pitching coach. Just saw that one just before I came on the air anyway. That'd be a great option coming back to the organization he was with for years. And I'm sure the Rangers would love to have a very experienced pitching coach be able to handle their pitching staff. But they're going to need to add at least one ace, possibly two, to really improve that starting rotation. We'll see if they get it done. Just want to go down to this one article. Last time we were with you, we broke down the Nick Martinez deal. You can check that out as well if you're unfamiliar with that. You can also check out the video here as well. Wasn't too many headlines today. We did see the Phillies did extend the contract of Dave Dombrowski for 3 more years. That'll take his deal through the 2027 season. That's kind of what happens when you take your team to the World Series, except that's not always the case. Look at the Texas Rangers. They made it to the World Series, and that didn't exactly happen for the executives at that time anyway. Look at the Astros on the other end. James Click was only offered a 1-year deal, not a 3-year contract extension. We touched a little bit on left-handed outfielders anyway. We put out a Cody Bellinger video for you guys yesterday, I believe, about the Dodgers non-tendering him. The Dodgers have actually cleared over $100 million in payroll, so they've got a lot of money that they can spend this offseason. They're looking at Aaron Judge. They're looking at Verlander. They're looking at DeGrom. They're also looking at the shortstop class. They're hoping to pry away one of those shortstops because they're expected to lose Trey Turner in free agency. We'll see where he ends up going. But the Houston Astros are looking for an outfielder. The Mets are looking for an outfielder. The Blue Jays are looking for an outfielder. The Mariners are looking for an outfielder. The Rangers. There's not enough outfielders to really go around, so the price of poker is really going to go up for the few competent options that are out there. Put out a video yesterday about Mitch Haniger, how his price for poker really went up. At the beginning of the offseason, it was projected he'd get 3 years, around $40 million a year, $40 million total. I imagine that price has gone certainly up. I mean, he's not exactly the most durable player in the league, but when he is on the field anyway, he is a very good bat, above average glove on defense. So he is 32 years old as well, so he's on the wrong side of that age curve as well. So we'll see if he ends up getting 3 years or if he gets a little bit more because of the dearth of talent on the free agent market right now. Trade targets, that's a little bit different. There are some options to be had via trade, whether you look at the Cubs and Ian Happ, you look at the Mariners who are looking to add an outfielder, maybe a team that's looking to buy low on an outfielder like Jesse Winker. When he is very good against right-handed pitching, not so much against lefties. But for about 400 at-bats, you can account for productive at-bats anyway, if he can rebound to his career numbers. Last year, though, with Seattle, it just did not work. Righties or lefties, he did not perform very well. So a bounce-back year in store, hopefully, for Jesse Winker. We'll see where he ends up going. But the Rangers are interested, the Dodgers are interested, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim are interested, and the San Francisco Giants are interested in Mitch Haniger. Now, imagine the Giants, who trimmed their payroll down to about $120 million this year after getting their contracts off their books, like Longoria and Belt. They have some money to go out there and spend. So, say they earmark $40 million of that to go to Aaron Judge. That brings their payroll up to $160. They can still conceivably add another $40 million in payroll, maybe even bringing back their ace, Carlos Rodon, maybe going after Mitch Haniger to play the other outfield spot. Remember, they only have Jock Peterson on a 1-year deal because he accepted the qualifying offer. So good on them for being able to keep one outfielder. A little bit pricey, though, for a guy, again, who is only good against one type of pitcher. That's going to be right-handed pitching. Good thing for him, though, is that most of the league is right-handed pitching anyway, so he should get 400 at-bats. But that's a lot of money for a guy you have to take off the field because of defensive issues late in games, and a guy you have to play every other day because you can't play against lefties. So we'll see how things work out with the San Francisco Giants. But as I was saying, there's a lot of market anyway for outfielders with not much supply out there for them. So a team like the Chicago Cubs, who could flip an Ian Happ and possibly bring in some lower level free agents and go cheap in the outfield while still adding to that rotation and at shortstop, maybe they see that as an opportunity to allow their trade market to bring back some prospects for them in Ian Happ, and then bring in some more major league ready talent in a guy like Dansby Swanson or a starting pitcher like Rodon, something like that. But the Cubs are going to need to add another rotation arm as well. Starting pitching also is very thin at the very top. There's a few options up there: DeGrom, Verlander, Rodon. Those are kind of the big names out there. After that, it kind of starts to drop off rather quickly. Chris Bassett's pretty good, but outside of that, you're looking at a bunch of 1 year, 2 year type of contracts. Wish and hope upon a star that they turn into this year's Martin Perez. But there's a lot of those type of pitchers on the market this year. Now the trade market should be a little bit more interesting as well. You also have the international market to look at with Kodai Senga. He has got a very, very big market right now. He's already interviewed with I believe the Mets, the Padres, the Giants, the Rangers, and I want to say there's at least 5 other teams who are known to have significant interest in Senga, being the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Mariners, the Dodgers, and I want to say the Diamondbacks as well are also interested in Senga, so we'll see where he ends up going. You shouldn't see too many headlines with the Diamondbacks this offseason, but there's one for you. Remember, they did acquire Kyle Lewis from the Seattle Mariners, kind of a buy low type of a guy there. Remember, he did win the Rookie of the Year award in 2020, so we'll see if they can get anything out of him, or if they're just going to see if they can, if they can't get anything out of him, quickly turn it over to the young guys that they have coming up in their system. They have 3 elite outfield prospects coming through their minor league system, so just in case Kyle Lewis doesn't hit, or if they even get anything out of him, they still got those guys to fall back on as well. But those are kind of what you're seeing on the market. You also have Michael Brantley, who was injured the second half of the year. Probably the most professional hitter in all of baseball that's on the free agent market right now. So if you're looking for a bent or a DH type of hitter, a left fielder, something like that, I would lean more towards a team that has at least 50% of his at-bats coming at that DH spot, not necessarily relying on him every day in left. He is a little bit older of a player. You don't want to have him wear down. You don't want to have those injury issues happen. But Brantley would be a great sign for any number of teams out there. I think his best fit is still back with the Houston Astros. The process he has as a hitter before he came to Houston is very similar to what they were already looking for, and he just fit in there like a glove. Just very productive ever since he's been in Houston, and so I wonder if he goes somewhere else if he's not quite as good of a fit. I think he'll still be a very good hitter, but I just think the way that team utilized him kind of worked perfectly, and I would really hope if I'm an Astros fan, I'm able to retain a guy like Michael Brantley. Some of your other buy low candidates on the free agent market: Cody Bellinger, former MVP just 3 years ago anyway, in his age 27 season. It's not very often you get to see former MVPs at that level hit free agency at age 27, and that's because he's been terrible for pretty much ever since he won that MVP award. I mean, he's hitting around 200, 220 anyway. Still has some decent power numbers, still is a good defender at certain spots anyway, but he's nowhere near the type of profile that he was, say, 2 years ago, or even a year ago. But he's really kind of fallen off. The other hitter that's kind of in that same kind of a boat is Joey Gallo. I think teams that have at-bats available in their outfield, teams that are not looking to contend. So, for instance, you're looking at teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Arizona Diamondbacks, somebody who has regular at-bats to be able to take a chance on a player like that in the beginning of the season at least before they turn it over to a young guy. That's who I would be looking for to try to sign Cody Bellinger or a guy like Joey Gallo. Now, Bellinger's market apparently does include the Toronto Blue Jays. They're looking to get a little bit more left-handed in their outfield lineup. If they're planning on using him for consistent at-bats, I would say that's a good fit. It gets them a little bit more left or more balanced anyway in that lineup, righty, lefty, etc. But I wonder if you could do a little bit better than Cody Bellinger. They are interested in bringing in Brandon Nimmo, but his market is significant right now. The Mets would really love to have him back. They're trying to tie up DeGrom first, and then they'll pivot to Nimmo. If they don't get an answer from DeGrom, though, by Thanksgiving, we could see them quickly turn to Nimmo and try to get him locked up before the winter meetings. But we're looking at the A lot of teams in this market. The San Francisco Giants yet again are interested in this market. The Dodgers have been tied to him already. The Cubs have been mentioned as a suitor as well. The Rangers have at least talked to his agent. They haven't actually tried to get anything done with him, just because I think the price is going to get too high because they're trying to spend their money on pitching, not necessarily the top of the outfield market. But he's probably going to get in the neighborhood of $20 million a year or so, and I wonder if he gets anywhere between 4 and 5 year contract, just because of there's really nobody else in center field on the free agent market right now. But we'll see where his market ends up. But really appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys, as I mentioned, haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. We're getting closer to our 1,000 goal. We'd really appreciate all the support we can get. So if you hit that like button and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys. But we just mentioned the Dombrowski thing, so we'll kind of pass by this one here. As you can see, there's the market anyway for Bellinger. Blue Jays, as I mentioned, we're calling on him. Giants, they're familiar with the Dodgers front office. Of course, Farhan Zaidi coming over from the Dodgers. Cubs, of course, are looking for some low-cost options for their outfield. Maybe they could get a buy low guy here, trade away Ian Happ, plug in some of those at-bats they're giving away in Happ to Cody Bellinger, something like that. And we just talked about the Judge meeting with everybody. We touched on the Yankees having other needs. Some of those other needs are, of course, starting pitching. Jameson Taillon is going to be a free agent for them. They have already brought back Anthony Rizzo, but they're going to have some issues, especially with a contact-hitting outfielder anyway. That's what they're trying to add in addition to Aaron Judge. So even if they get back Aaron Judge, they still need to add some other pieces. I would say they need at least 2 rotation arms, or at least 2 arms that they can put in a rotation if necessary, or at long relief in the bullpen. Then, of course, they have to turn to their bullpen. Britton's now a free agent. Chapman's a free agent as well. So make sure, if you're a New York Yankees fan, you're keeping that organization accountable, not just for Aaron Judge, but for continuing to improve this team. Because even with Aaron Judge, they weren't able to win the World Series last year. They saw deficiencies in that team. I told you all season long, even before the season began, after the trade deadline, I told you they needed to add starting pitching. They continued to say, no, we're good. Look how good our record is. Well, in the first half of the season, first 2 months, you were world beaters. But then we saw everything kind of regress back to the mean. Your starting pitchers had over a 4.5 ERA in the second half of the, or excuse me, not just in the second half of the season, from July on. And we saw them trade away Jordan Montgomery, who did nothing but excel after the trade to St. Louis, because the Yankees pitching coaches anyway apparently didn't trust him to throw his pitching arsenal that he had, that he took with him to the St. Louis Cardinals. He went off last year at the end of the year. And so the Cardinals, that's part of the reason why they were able to propel themselves into the postseason, is because of that trade for bringing in Jordan Montgomery. Of course, they have Harrison Bader that they got back in that trade, but they're looking for another contact-hitting outfielder. They need to add to that starting staff. They brought in Frankie Montas at the deadline. They still need to add some other pieces. I still think they need at least one solid starter to put in there for sure, and at least another rotation piece that you can either put at the back end of that rotation or in the bullpen for long relief. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I told you guys last year that they needed to bring in some more starting pitching, and that's kind of what bit them in the end against the Astros. The Astros just kind of wiped the floor with them. Their starting pitching was so much better. You could see it in just about every game. Garrett Cole being the only #1 starter on that staff, Cortez going down due to injury, etc. That did hurt their chances a little bit, but I mean, come on. The Yankees, they need to win a World Series at this point. They just have to. It's an organizational mandate. They haven't won one since '09, and just having a subpar rotation is not going to get the job done. So I think they're just more kicking the tires, though, when you're looking at these two names here, DeGrom and Senga. Senga they could have some real interest in, don't get me wrong, but they're out of the price range for Jacob DeGrom. Even if they lose Aaron Judge to, say, the San Francisco Giants, there's no way they're going to pivot and take all that money, put it into Jason DeGrom and say, or Jacob DeGrom, excuse me, and say, hey, we got added to our pitching staff. Now we just need to improve our outfield and get another hitter in here, and we're fine. We're better than we were last year. Yeah, your rotation is better, but your team is worse as a whole, because Aaron Judge, American League MVP, he rose, or what did it say, high tide raises all boats anyway. Aaron Judge being in that lineup made other hitters in that lineup better. Without Aaron Judge in that lineup, you're going to see Giancarlo Stanton continue to strike out more and more and more. The pitchers are not going to be afraid to throw at him or throw to him in that lineup anyway. You're also going to see them be more delicate on the edges and try to be more effective with their pitches, and because they don't really have the threat of Aaron Judge before or after him in that lineup. And just the other hitters in that lineup. DJ LeMahieu had a nice career year, 2 years ago, had injuries this past year. He's also, I would expect to have that performance come down as well. Again, high tide raises all boats. Aaron Judge goes away. All those other averages, all the benefits of having him in your lineup go away as well. It's not like those benefits stay just because Aaron Judge is gone. As I mentioned, the week of Thanksgiving, there's not too many transactions, so we shouldn't get too many of those. We're getting a lot of rumors. We saw a lot of rumors yesterday. Jays news, they were talking with Cody Bellinger. That's pretty much the only other news aside from Kodai Senga, but welcome in, Cheesy. But they're talking about bringing in an outfielder, Brendan Nimmo. We reported on that last week as well. Little news there. The Tigers relievers drawing trade interest. We saw that at the trade deadline as well. The only one, they only traded one of them. That was their pending free agent, Michael Fulmer. They still have other relievers that they could move at the back end of that bullpen. Tigers are in an interesting spot this offseason. They're kind of stuck in the middle of a rebuild slash, we've got the end of Miggy Cabrera. We've got a good young prospect in Riley Green. We've got some decent rotation options in Francisco Rodriguez. We spent all this money on Javi Baez. So they got to figure out which way they're going to go. Are they going to go into a full rebuild and tear it down? I don't think they will. They've got too many good young pieces and a lot of money committed at some big spots to do that. But they're not good enough to win a postseason series either. So they've got to make some decisions. Welcome back, Cobra. Judge to San Francisco. I was watching Hot Stove this morning for a moment anyway, and Bill Ripken said something very interesting. We've kind of spoken about it before here, but how the Yankees, while they're still viewed as the favorite to bring him back, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a 50-50 shot that he goes to the Yankees or to another team. I would say it's probably more likely that the Yankees are probably a 40% favorite, and then you have the rest of the field at 60%. Now that doesn't mean it's 60% likely that he goes to the Giants. I would say that the Giants and Dodgers both are going to have blank checkbooks when it comes to Aaron Judge. They're more than willing to go as high as he wants to go, and it's only going to be whether or not he really wants to stay in New York, or if he sees the grass is greener on the other side, that kind of a thing. But we'll see where he ends up going. I'm very curious to see which option he chooses, because if he doesn't choose the Yankees, as I mentioned, there's not really a way for them to solve their problems. If we see him leave and go to another team, we could see some very interesting trades out of New York. We mentioned already that they could make a move for Pablo Lopez in previous videos. I know one of my subscribers here, Anthony, is pretty much in most of these lives. I don't know if you're watching already, Anthony, but if your Marlins are willing to trade Pablo Lopez, I think the Yankees would really like to have him right now with or without Aaron Judge. But say outside of that move, we could see some other interesting moves. Say they bring in Jesse Winker just to kind of fill it for 1 year until they're able to go after Shohei Ohtani. Other outfielders that they could try to bring in. They made the surprise moves for Giancarlo Stanton years ago from the Marlins as well. But that was more of to help the Marlins out, save them money. I think the Marlins still ended up paying, $100 million that deal after he was traded to the Yankees. But they were able to save quite a bit of money off their books. Other struggling outfielders out there might find the grass is greener in New York and find a resurgent year, etc. But there's no clear path anyway for what the Yankees should do if they lose Aaron Judge. So that's why I say if you're looking at the Judge sweepstakes, the most interesting thing for my perspective as having a YouTube channel that talks sports, say he does leave, then it's anarchy in New York. We're talking about Horse's head being in the bed of Brian Cashman. He's gone by trade deadline season. We're talking about Aaron Boone gone after this season. We're talking about Shohei Ohtani coming over in free agency anyway, possibly being the biggest contract ever because he is a ace level pitcher and a great slugger, DH type hitter anyway as well. Cheesy, I hope for Nimmo, if all we get this offseason is Cody, I'd be especially with losing Teo. Well, if I were in your shoes as a Jays fan, I think you're going to do better than Cody Bellinger, don't get me wrong. I think you're going to miss the power of Teoscar Hernandez. I don't really understand the trade aside from trying to get a little bit more balanced as far as, a little bit more, balanced right and left-handed hitter. But I think Teoscar Hernandez, even with 1 year left on that deal, I think they really should have tried to lock him up. I understand they already spent money on Springer. They've got some big young contracts to come up here shortly that they're going to have to worry about. Vlad Guerrero, at some point, they're going to have to pay Bo Bichette. Are they really willing to go to, say, a 5-6 year deal for Teoscar Hernandez? I would have done it because you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. But I think you're going to end up with a better option than Cody Bellinger. I hope you get Nemo as well, but if you don't, we talked earlier at the trade deadline that they were talking about Ian Happ from the Cubs or Ramon Laureano from the A's. Those could be another couple of good options out there. Yankees fourth in the East without Judge. Fourth? I'd say there's an argument they're fifth. And that might be shocking for some of you to hear, but just looking at their roster right now with Aaron Judge, they're in the thick of it with two other teams, the Rays, of course, and the Blue Jays. They're obviously going to fall immediately behind those two. That's 1 and 2 in the division. 3, you're looking at either the Orioles, Red Sox, or Yankees. Those are the 3 teams left. Orioles are on the up and come. They need to add some pieces. They're still very young. They don't necessarily have the proven winning track record behind them yet, but they should add some nice rotation. Should add at least one nice rotation piece, a number 2, number 3 type like Nate Eovaldi. We saw that news coming from Mark Feinsand, I believe, earlier today that they could bring in a guy like that type of a pitcher to help that starting staff. They're also looking at adding a nice bat in the outfield. Maybe a guy like Michael Brantley comes in as a professional hitter, helps educate some of their younger hitters in that lineup as they grow. Remember, the front office came over from the Houston Astros a couple years ago, so there is a connection there to Michael Brantley. But they've also been connected to Bellinger, another buy low candidate. If he returns to any level of form with that Orioles team, another good get for them. But I would say they're firmly behind the Orioles if they lose Aaron Judge, even with Garrett Cole and all those other guys that they have on that team. I just don't think it's enough. Now, I could hear an argument that they're better than the Red Sox, and I think they are. But if I could still see a season where Garrett Cole, starts to feel the heat of the media, where they're not exactly winning games. The New York pressure starts to get to all the other players in that lineup. Volpe comes up and isn't exactly the greatest hit at shortstop. Rizzo's trying to hold things together, from a leadership perspective in the clubhouse. But, they're the Yankees. They're expected to win. They're expected to be at the top of the division, not competing for the cellar. And so every single day starts to get a grind. And so the second half of the season, we could see the Red Sox leapfrog the Yankees at the very end if they lose Aaron Judge. But that's how important Aaron Judge is to that team. Now, say they bring in Aaron Judge. Where are they at in that division? Again, right at the very top with with teams like the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays. As a Padre fan, I just want Abreu and Senga, and I'm good. Well, I would still want to add a bullpen piece. I know you've already spent a lot of money back there this offseason. I think you've spent, 80, 85, $90 million in that bullpen already so far. But I would add one more 7th, 8th inning type of guy if I were the Padres. But bringing in Abreu, that solves your first base position. You could use a utility infielder. Bringing back Profar would be of interest as well. A bench outfielder type, maybe even somebody who can take regular at-bats in the outfield would be nice. You've had connections to Joey Gallo before. Maybe you bring him in. But Abreu, I think, is the perfect fit for pretty much any team. Very good contact hitter. 4th in hits over in last year anyway. 183, I think he had. Yeah. It's like I was saying, Cheesy, Aaron Judge really helps support that lineup, and as much as he meant to that team, say he's not there, I mean, they were, as a rotation, they were over 4.5 ERAs from June on. The first half of the year, they were just winning every single game they could. The rotation looked like it had no issues. However, we saw that rotation kind of sputter down the stretch. The bullpen essentially fell apart due to injuries and poor performance, and now they've got free agency to deal with Britton and Chapman now leaving in free agency more than likely. They could bring in a guy familiar with playing in New York in Adam Ottavino to be that 8th inning guy, but there's no real clear solution here for what the Yankees should do, A, with their bullpen, and B, most certainly, if they lose Aaron Judge. So I could see the Yankees finish 4th, 5th in that division if they lose Aaron Judge. Now, say, on the other side of the coin, say the Giants or the Dodgers end up getting him. Dodgers trimmed $100 million in payroll from what they paid last year. Now, of course, they were above the luxury tax threshold, so I'm not sure how much more they're going to want to go beyond that. But if they're willing to go as high as Judge wants to go, I still think they're going to want to add a shortstop on top of that. So let's pencil in Judge at 40, we'll call it 45 million, just to say they, $5 million tax just to get Judge to leave New York to go to L.A. So that's $45 million they're paying to Judge. Say they bring in a guy like Xander Bogaerts at, 25 million a year, something like that. That's roughly what, $70 million a year that they're adding to their payroll. That's still $30 million less. $25 million less if they give Bogaerts $30 million than what they paid last year for their team. And they still have other holes to fill, and they could easily do that, bringing in another rotation piece back into the rotation arm. They need to add some bullpen pieces out there, I believe, and they could add some more platoon-type players. Third base, they could bring back Justin Turner on a cheaper deal, maybe even go for Evan Longoria, who's going for a swung song type of year anyway. Go cheap at that position. But Dodgers would be very interesting if they they get that done. On the Giants side of things, say they get Aaron Judge in, they're also still looking at their own free agent, Carlos Rodon. They're looking at Haniger to possibly play in the outfield as well. They're also looking at shortstops, Bogaerts, Correa. They don't have Brandon Belt. They could look at first base in addition to those pieces. Giants, I think, have a longer road back to contention, but Aaron Judge would certainly be a big step in that direction. For the Giants, I would expect for him to go to San Francisco just because they're a little bit lower on the totem pole than where the Dodgers or Yankees are. Say if it's a $5 million tax to go to LA, we're probably talking about a $7 or $8 million tax to go to the San Francisco Giants. Regarding any Dodgers news, any news on Trey Turner? Well, we already know pretty much Trey Turner's going back to the East Coast. If I had to put money on it right now, I'd say he's 90% certain to go to Philadelphia. I think it's just a matter of whether or not the terms are right for him. There are some dark horse teams out there for him, but I think it's pretty much set in stone at this point. He is going back to the East Coast. He will not stay a member of the LA Dodgers. Say at the last minute the Dodgers come back with a Godfather type offer, $35 million a year for 8 years. Then I think Turner might have some pause, but I think even if they offer that deal, I think the money the Phillies that they're going to offer are going to be comparable, and I think he just wants to go back east where he's more comfortable. The other shortstops out there, there's a lot of rumors between the Chicago Cubs. The most likely candidate for them is Dansby Swanson, but again, the Braves are trying to pull out all the stops to keep him. They do have a backup option in Vaughn Grissom if they lose him, but I'd be very curious to see if Dansby Swanson really takes the highest offer, say from the Cubs, because I think the Braves offer might not be the best, but it'll be right there and be very competitive. They have a team that's ready to win now, and I don't think they want to lose their, star shortstop just at this time. If the Padres get Turner, Tatis is going to play the outfield. Well, Cobra, I know you're talking a lot about the Padres, but just looking at that team, I would say they're going to move him to the outfield anyway. I think if they just keep Kim at shortstop, I think you're looking at Tatis Jr. as your center fielder next year, maybe your left fielder, depending on how they use Soto in right or left. But I think Tatis Jr., at least for his days in San Francisco, his days at short are over, short of an injury to Kim. But there's already rumors coming out about that. Jim Bowden of MLB.com already said as much, that he expects Tatis Jr. to be in the outfield. Not just because of his injury issues with his arm, etc. It's just the way the team is structured right now. They already have a shortstop that's capable of handling the position. That's not necessarily set to be an outfielder. Tatis Jr. is athletic enough that he can handle the position in the outfield, and so they expect him to be in the outfield next year. Now, as I mentioned, Tatis Jr. is a dark horse trade candidate. So if you're looking for some big, headline-grabbing moves, we mentioned the Yankees. If they lose Judge, they're going to have to do something dramatic to, really right that ship. Say they turn to San Diego and say, "Hey, we need to make a big splash move. We understand we got some shortstops that are really valuable and we really trust them, but we need to bring in somebody right now to stop the bleeding, and we need to move or to turn the page anyway from Aaron Judge." They make a big offer, say Volpe and a couple of other prospects for Tatis Jr. Then I think you'd get some very interesting headlines going on this offseason. Yeah, Tatis Jr. is very fun to watch. Whether you like him or hate him, I mean, he is entertaining one way or the other. But Tatis Jr. just needs to get his head right. Well, I mean, yeah, if you're giving up Tatis Jr., it's going to have to be Volpe. But you know, just since we're on the topic of trading, let's just say we did something like that. In case you're wondering, this site here is baseballtradevalues.com. If you're wondering if your trade makes any sense, just go to this site, click on Trade Simulator, create your profile. All you need is just an email address, and you can post a trade and just get feedback on it. But just kind of eyeball what it would take. Let's say the Padres are looking to trade Tatis Jr. Look at his value. He has, even with his big contract, he still has 112 positive value. Might want to put the other team in here. Say the Yankees if they lose Judge. All right, let's say we move him to the Yankees. The Yankees' top trade asset right now is Volpe at 50. So just to equal Tatis Jr.'s value in this type of a deal, according to this website, you need 2 Volpes and change. So let's say we start the deal with Volpe here. What would you guys put in next? Peraza? I mean, you're getting Tatis Jr. to play short. You don't need him anymore. So say you put in Peraza. That gets you to about, what, 77? You need another 40? Where are you going to get that from? Padres need an outfielder, so you bring in, so you trade him Dominguez. That's your top 3 prospects right there. Don't know if you want to give up a bullpen piece or another piece off your major league roster, so I wouldn't trade any of those. Loizing has been good for you, but maybe he could be a nice piece for them. A ready big leaguer. So let's just give, since Loizing is 27, we'll go ahead and put him in the deal. Let's just look at the deal already. Right there. Just looking at the top 3 prospects and the Loizinga, you're at least close as term as value. 118 to 112. Let's just see what the trade looks like if we validate it. Fair deal. Now, of course, the Yankees could get, maybe save a little bit there, go with a little bit cheaper option there than the Loizinga. But that's about what Tatis Jr.'s value is. Say the Yankees do end up losing a guy like Aaron Judge. That's what you could possibly see as a surprise dark horse move for the Yankees to go out there and get. I don't think anybody's really talking about that option because remember, Tatis Jr. kind of wore out his welcome last year with A.J. Preller, the GM for the Padres. So I'd be very, if I'm another team and I want to, pivot my organization after a big loss in free agency, Tatis Jr. might be the piece for you. One other thing I haven't really talked about yet is the Texas Rangers anyway. They're really trying to get their starting pitching together. Again, watching MLB Live and Bill Ripken, very familiar with Bruce Bochy and that older regime of Major League Baseball. Bruce Bochy, by the way, is now the 3rd oldest manager in Major League Baseball. I don't think many of you guys realize that. He did not come in to do a rebuild of any type. Somebody in Texas convinced him that they're going to be able to convince some of these ace-level starting pitchers to go to Texas. No trade clauses. In baseball, a no trade clause doesn't amount to a hill of beans. I mean, if a team wants you gone, most players are more than willing to say, hey, you don't want me here? Fine, I'm out. I'm going to pick where I want to go. Tatis Jr. would have no trouble wanting to go to New York. Just think of his marketability there. He'd make so much more money. It's not even funny. But back to the Rangers news anyway. As I was mentioning, Bruce Bochy is the 3rd oldest manager. Somebody in the Rangers front office told him, we're going to be contenders. We're going to get starting pitching, et cetera, et cetera. They are going to be the highest bidder, I believe, for multiple starting pitchers in this free agent class. They're going to have the best contract anyway in front of these players out of any of these other teams. And I don't think it's going to be reasonably close. Where every team just tries to bid, say one team bids $100, the Rangers would come by and bid $100 and 1 penny. It's not going to be like that. The Rangers are going to have the clear best offer in front of these pitchers, and it's just going to be up to them which offer they end up taking. The curious thing is, will the Rangers be able to get 2 of them like they did last year, going after Corey Seager and Marcus Semien? I think those were the top 2 targets they had on their board last offseason. I think Marcus Semien is 3rd in WAR over the last 3 years anyway, or last 2 years. In all of Major League Baseball. That's how good of a player he is. Even in a down year last year, that's how productive Marcus Semien has been. Corey Seager, in a down year last year, still hit, 30 bombs or close to it? But I expect them to try to do a double dip again here in free agency. Maybe not necessarily DeGrom and Verlander, as was suggested by Bill Ripken, but maybe a DeGrom and Rodon, or a DeGrom and a Chris Bassett, or Rodon and Bassett, something like that. They're going to add a couple of starters, I believe. They've already added two. They had Martin Perez last year. They were able to retain him on the qualifying offer. They made the trade for Jake Odorizzi, and then they're going to have some options to trade with at the back end of the rotation. Just saw that come up on my screen, but I don't see the comment for some reason. There it is. Any news on Jays catchers? Heard a lot of rumors early on. Not lately. I mean, the Jays have kind of an abundance of riches anyway back there. They have Jansen and Kirk. They need to get some understanding on what they want to do with Kirk more than anything else. Either A, move him to more your DH type of hitter full time and let Jansen handle that position, or move one of them. That's kind of what I think they could do to make that lineup a little bit more balanced as well, is just trade one of those two catching options, get some nice pieces back, maybe even a major leaguer for major leaguer type of deal. Padres do have some very good rotation options as well already on their staff. I'm not sure they need to go the route of Rodon and Senga. Senga's probably going to get in the neighborhood of $15 million a year. Rodon's going to get in the neighborhood of probably $30, $25 million a year. His market, according to what he wants in free agency, he wants $35 million plus in free agency. I wouldn't necessarily consider that as the best option. But if you're a team that's looking at bringing in Rodon and Senga, trying to get the Rodon number down to as close as 25 as you can, I think is paramount. But as I mentioned, Senga, he hasn't proven it in Major League Baseball. He's 31 years old. He's done pretty much everything you can do in international ball. But I think his market's probably going to be around 15 million, and so I think he should find a good option here in the States. Welcome back, Charles. Where is Aaron Judge going? I don't think anybody really knows yet. I think it's pretty much a jump ball at this point. I think there's three teams that have pretty much equal chance of bringing him in. But if I had to say a favorite, I would still say the Yankees at, say, 40%. That means the field. If I chose the field at 60%, that would be better odds of him leaving than staying. But still the favorite as far as the best odds to sign Aaron Judge would remain with the Yankees. I think the Dodgers and Giants are very similar as far as odds. I think the Giants are very interesting just because of his attachment to that area. But I think when you're talking at a free agent of his caliber, there's a lot of money going into it, so you can't really count on geography being the biggest influence on that type of a deal. In case you're wondering why we have a trade here on our screen of Tatis Jr., if you're just joining us, we were speculating what could happen with the New York Yankees if they lost Aaron Judge in free agency. What's their next step? Because you got to have a contingency plan. Acuna Jr. is not on the trade block. That's just a whole bunch of hogwash out there. But in case you guys are just joining us, the reason why we had that on there, the Yankees need to have a backup plan. I told you guys all offseason long, even since the trade deadline, that if you're interested in a shortstop and you didn't get one of the top guys on the free agent market, or heck, you just wanted Fernando Tatis Jr., make a call to San Diego. And if you make the right offer, I think the Padres might actually pull the trigger on that one, just because they're pretty much they're pretty much done with his antics, his lack of the ability to seek medical treatment after multiple motorcycle accidents in the offseason. His immaturity on and off the field over the last few years. And then, of course, before he was about to come back from his injuries from the motorcycle accidents that kept him out for 3 months of the season, he was popped for PED use because of a treatment for ringworm, as he said. But I think if you make a case to the Padres, that, like, say the Yankees come in with this type of an offer, that's a real offer. 3 of your top prospects, possibly your 1, 2, and 3, depending on which ranking system you're using, Baseball America, MLB.com, etc., and then adding a nice starting pitching bullpen piece to it in Loaizinga, that's a pretty good option if you're a Padres fan. But to answer your question, Cobra, no, Acuna Jr. is not on the trade block. He just switched agencies along with his brothers anyway. One is in the prospect pool for the Chicago White Sox, I believe, and of course the other one, Luis Angel Acuna, is in the top 10 for the Texas Rangers. They all switched to a different agency. Apparently, they feel like they were getting bad advice in signing that long-term deal. So he doesn't want his brothers to make that same mistake because he kind of sees how much his value is, and he sees the money that's being thrown around at guys like Aaron Judge, $40 million a year. Acuna's on one of the best, if not the best deal in all of baseball. and he kind of understands he missed the boat there. Yeah, well, I don't think it would take what it took for Soto. Soto still has 2 years left to control. The money has already been given to Tatis Jr. You have to worry about injury issues with him now, the durability, not just with the motorcycle accidents, but with his arm. You have to worry about knuckle-headed type of things as well. Juan Soto, you didn't have any of those issues. Let's kind of do another one just for fun. Let's clear the trade boards. Just out of curiosity, I know we got a Blue Jays fan in here, so we'll go the Blue Jays here. Pull up their roster here first. You can see their best contract right now, Alex Manoah, 153 positive value. Bichette right there as well. Moreno's got a lot of value. But as I mentioned, the catching spot could be a spot where they try to make a move here, differentiate their lineup a little bit. Kirk really needs to be a DH. He's more of a he doesn't start that much behind the plate. There are better defensive options, I'll put it that way, in the Blue Jays system. And while Kirk's bat is very good for them, let's just see what it would take, because they've got an abundance of riches behind the plate. So let's just say they trade the most valuable one in Kirk, outside of their prospect in Moreno. Moreno they control for 6 years, Kirk for 4. So that's who I would trade if I were the Blue Jays. Who should we trade him to? Who's the outfielder we're going to get, left-handed hitting outfielder that's out there? I mean, you could look at Jesse Winker. That's nowhere near the value, but just to kind of give you guys an idea of what that would look like, just from a value perspective. You can see it's pretty much nothing. Down here at 1.8. Okay. Teoscar Hernandez, the guy they just traded away, had an 8.4 value. So where are you guys going to go for a trade if you're the Blue Jays? Who needs a catcher? Well, we know the Mets are going to need a catcher. They need an offensive weapon there. So maybe you work out some type of a deal there. Maybe you bring in a guy like Starling Marte. Not saying that would ever happen, but just to see what the value is. Marte, negative trade value, so it wouldn't work there. Well, I mean, if you're trading one of your catchers, which catcher would you move? I don't think you're trading the prospect in Moreno. I understand he has a little bit more value, but Kirk is limited defensively, is not going to be able to stay behind the plate long term, and he's a DH on a roster that's going to have to free up a DH spot. Astros could use a catcher, that's correct. They're also looking for an outfielder, though. They already have a DH as well. Think of teams who are looking for a catcher, DH type player. Say like a team like the Chicago Cubs. They have a guy that you are interested in Ian Happ. So let's say we look at the Chicago Cubs. They were talking about Ian Happ at the deadline. Let's see what Happ's trade value is. There's Ian Happ at 14. Still heavily in your favor. Let's put Kirk back on the board so you guys can see that one. See? Still not equal trade value there. So maybe you'd get a prospect from the Cubs. Around 20. Really wish I'd stop scanning up every time I change the team. Maybe they get Crow Armstrong, the piece they added at the trade deadline this past year. Something like that. That's a pretty fair trade there. You get a prospect for your outfield in Crow Armstrong. You bring in Happ. That's a pretty fair deal. Make your lineup a little bit more balanced. Former top prospect, former first-round pick in Crow Armstrong, and you still have 2 good catchers on your roster. And you can move Springer to left or right, depending on how you set up your outfield. Put Happ in center. What do you guys think about that one? Not a Blue Jays fan, not a Cubs fan, just spitballing an idea. That would make your team a little bit more balanced. That's what they're trying to do with the Teoscar Hernandez deal. Not sure the Cubs do this type of a move, just because they're giving up one of their top assets they just gained. And, of course, they're one of their best trade chips right now in Ian Happ. Plus, they're looking to contend this next season for a playoff spot. All they would really need to do is re-sign Wilson Contreras for their offensive guy. So I wouldn't see the reason for the move from a Cubs perspective. But from a Jays perspective, that would be a great deal. Pardon me. Just to kind of show that one. Trade accepted if it were to go through. Makes sense for both teams. But let's clear it out. Let's do a team I'm more familiar with. As I mentioned, I'm a Rangers fan, so I'm looking for ways to improve my starting pitching and my left field spot. Let's say we get 2 of the starters on the free agent market if we're Rangers fans. Say we end up with DeGrom and Bassett, or like Bill Ripken floated this morning. Say they end up with 2 of the top starters out there, DeGrom and Verlander both. Don't think there's a prayer that happens, but they still need to add left fielder. They're not going to really have a lot of money left over for bullpen or for their left field spot to bring in a guy like Jansen or Haniger. So they could go cheap or possibly trade for it. So they're going to have some back-end starters at on their with some potential that they could move. Guys who haven't really embraced their ceiling. Most valuable one is probably going to be Dane Dunning. About 18, so let's say Dane Dunning is the guy we want to flip out. 4 years left to control. Posted around a 4 ERA, I believe, last year. Really got no run support. He's also going to be an older free agent when he does hit free agency at 31. So say he eventually hits that ceiling that he was once thought he would hit. If he ever becomes that ace on that, on a rebuilding club, something like that. As far as salary, he's very cheap, so it's not going to cost a whole lot for the other team to acquire him as well. But maybe a team looking to trade a left fielder has a little bit of money left on their deal. We just saw that Jesse Winker is only worth 1.8, so that really wouldn't work if you're a Rangers fan. Just going to look down this list, see if I can find the team. Just curious to see what Brian Reynolds' value is, just for those of you who've asked about Brian Reynolds on a lot of my videos in the comment section. There's his value at 59, so he's way out of the range, of a Dane Dunning level deal. Red Sox, of course, are kind of in flux this year. They could, sell at the deadline. But they're said to be looking at outfielders. They're also said to either A, want to get an extension done with Rafael Devers, or they could try to trade him if they're unable to get a deal negotiated. They're going to have to make some tough choices. Nothing really here for the a Dane Dunning level deal to help out their rotation. There's one guy that's always on the trade block anyway, and that's Max Kepler of the Minnesota Twins. See if I can find him on here. 5.8, still not really worth the value of a Dane Dunning. No way you're going to be able to get Byron Buxton. Be a great bat, be a good get for the Texas Rangers. There is some knowledge between the two front offices anyway, but no way Yankees or the Twins would move Buxton. But maybe you do a little bit more of a trade on the prospect side, like Larnach. Oh, hold on, I just saw something pop across. We have a trade. The Los Angeles Angels are continuing to add to their roster. They have acquired outfielder Hunter Renfroe from the Brewers in exchange for right-handed pitcher Jansen Junk, Elvis Peguero, and Adam Seminaris. Deals that make you go, Now, of course, they really didn't get much out of Joe Adell. I wonder if this is his replacement in the lineup. Just this morning, they were talking about bringing in Mitch Haniger. I don't know if they'd still do it after bringing in Hunter Renfroe, but they're looking to pull out all the stops to convince Ohtani that they're trying to compete, that they should make the playoffs, but there's a trade for you. Flip it over here to Trade Rumors so you guys can see the deal. They should already have it on their site. And there it is. There you go. Looks like former top prospect Joe Adell looks coined for a fourth outfielder role. Maybe he gets flipped in another deal after this one. Curious to see where where his career ends up going now. Looks like there's not a clear path for regular playing time anyway for Joe Adell out in Los Angeles. As far as the lineup, of course, they have Ohtani, they have Trout, they have Ward. They just brought in Urshela to play short, probably. Renfroe. So they should have a very good offensive lineup. Urshela is very good at third base. Curious to see how he handles it defensively at shortstop. Rendon, of course, coming back from injury. Say they bring in Mitch Haniger. They should have a very good lineup. Question mark still for the Angels team. Is it enough? Do they have enough in the pen? Do they have enough in that staff? Bringing in Tyler Anderson, 3-year, $39 million. Great deal. A lot of risk, though, because it's only 1 year of great production at 2.57 ERA, I believe. The rest of his career, over 4.5. They did try to bring in Martin Perez before he agreed to the qualifying offer with the Rangers. They also talked with free agent starter Matt Boyd as well. They could still turn around and get Boyd, but I think they're looking a little bit deeper into the free agency pond for that. They're another team that could look at a trade for a guy like Pablo Lopez from the Marlins. Maybe Joe Adell could go there, along with a couple other prospects to get that deal done. I think they have, what is it, 4 right-handed starting pitching options right now in the for the Angels and 2 lefties. So bringing in Lopez and bringing them another lefty to use in that AL West. Looks like the Angels are going to be the surprise buyer here at the winter meetings. Now, I don't think they're going to play in the market for, Verlander, DeGrom, Rodon, Bassett, any of those level starters. But maybe we see a surprise or two. Maybe they get a Taijuan Walker, bring back Syndergaard, something like that. But there's the Hunter Renfroe trade for you that just happened moments ago. We'll have a video on that for you guys tomorrow. Just to kind of get back to our experiment here anyway. As I mentioned, this is baseballtradevalues.com. If you guys have any questions about trades, if your trade makes any sense at all, you can always go to that website and check it out. It works a lot like ESPN Trade Machine, if you're familiar, or NBA Trade Machine, if you're familiar with that one. That one's more salary based. This one's more player value based, because again, there is no salary cap in baseball. So yes, you can trade a $100 million player for a $10 million player. But in our quest here, we were trying to get a deal for the Rangers. Say they ended up getting their top 2, starting pitching options out there. They really remake that rotation. Their rotation is starter A that they bring in. We'll call it DeGrom for now. Starter B they bring in. We'll call it Verlander for now. Not saying they get both, but just as an idea. Say they get those 2. Then you're looking at Martin Perez as your 3, John Gray as your 4, and you're talking about your 5 being Jake Odorizzi. That's a very good rotation, but you still have other holes on that team that they need to fill, that if they spent that money all on their starting pitching, which would be great, don't get me wrong as a Ranger fan, you still have to address league worst production in left field. You still have to solve your closer issue. And now Dane Dunning, your most promising young starting pitcher that had any level of success on the Rangers over the last couple of years, now doesn't have a spot in the rotation. And so you turn around and try to flip him here at the winter meetings, or maybe a little after, for maybe a left fielder of similar cost for that team, similar control as well, possibly. So the Twins here, maybe you get a deal for Larinich or something like that. Cardinals are always looking for starting pitching. They always seem at the deadline to go with a veteran option. Say they want to go with a guy who has a lot more control at the Dane Dunning. Maybe they see something there. They can go there. Rangers could get an outfielder. Say they get like an O'Neill, something like that. If you're looking for a closer, if I'm the Rangers, I make a call to the Cleveland Guardians. Not saying this would be a good option, but if I'm looking for a closer, Clase is probably the best closer right now outside of Edwin Diaz. No way they move him, but I'd at least make the call. Just to see if you could at least start a conversation. Other closers that are out there, there's not a whole lot on the trade block anyway. But if you're looking for a proven closer, you have Taylor Rogers in free agency, Kenley Jansen. Both are likely out of your range if you spent $80 million on starting pitching in free agency outside of what you've already added. So maybe you contact the Giants about Doval here. They're in contact with Kenley Jansen. So say if they want to bring in Kenley Jansen, they go for a young rotation guy in Dunning. Maybe you make that type of deal if you're the Rangers. Maybe you throw in a prospect as well, just to even it out a little bit more. Yeah, I think they will do. I think they'll do that as well. The Rangers have a bunch of guys that they've had at closer currently on their roster. Joe Barlow, Jose Leclerc. I thought Leclerc might eventually get back to being that level of closer again. But it seems like that injury's kind of taken that level of production out of him. They've moved him to more of a multi-inning type of a player now. towards the end of last year. So I think they need to bring in a closer. But just as this, what I was trying to do with this thought experiment here is just say like they did on Hot Stove, say they, are the dark horse candidate and, go out there and, take two bites at the apple at the starting pitching market and get two number one starters out there. A DeGrom and a Verlander, or a DeGrom and a Bassett, DeGrom and Rodon, or a Verlander and Rodon, however they do it. Say they add two starters for roughly $70 million. That leaves them almost nothing left as far as dollars to go out there and solve their closer issue, solve their left fielder issue. Just curious to see what it would go or where it would go for. Where do you think Cody Bellinger could go on a one-year prove-it deal? Where do I think he could go? Just about anywhere. Where do I think he should go? I think he should go to a rebuilding team, take the pressure off of him, just like Joey Gallo. I think if they're looking to be on contending teams, there's only like one option out there that's going to be able to give them regular at-bats that they don't necessarily have to have the spotlight on them every single time they go up there, and that's the San Diego Padres. They have outfield at-bats available, and as long as you're willing to go at a discount, maybe you could go to the Padres. But just kind of finish our thought experiment here. Say the Rangers go out there and spend that type of a money, then then you got your starting rotation pretty much already set. Starting pitcher A and B that you just bring in, Perez, Gray, and Odorizzi, and then you're left with Dunning without a rotation spot in the lineup. Say they bring in Senga as one of those options, and DeGrom. That'd be fantastic for a Rangers perspective. That might save you a little bit of money left over to go out there and spend a little bit in free agency. Maybe bring back Joey Gallo for left field. He's very comfortable in Texas. That might work. But say, all the money's gone in free agency. You don't have enough left to go out there and get an impact level bat. You don't have enough to go get Haniger. You don't have enough to go get Jansen, Kimbrel, Rogers, any of those options out there. Aroldis Chapman, Zach Britton. You don't have that level of money available. So you have to go the trade route. What type of a trade, could they make? Braves could put either in left, yeah. They don't have, what is his name, Marcell Ozuna, his bat in the lineup. I mean, that was a horrible contract when they signed it. And the one bad contract on their books right now, I think they've got to eat that deal for 2 more years, too. At least 2 more years, I believe. Say the Cubs need a starting pitcher. We just mentioned them. Say we work out a deal for Ian Happ to take over in left. Dunning for Ian Happ, straight up. That might work. Cubs get a little bit better in their rotation. Trying to remember, who's your favorite team, Clay? I can't remember. Is it the Dodgers? I think it's the Dodgers. We'll go to the Dodgers here. Yeah, Ozuna can't play the field anymore either, yeah. I think it's the Dodgers, but let's say, we were talking about what the Rangers should do if they get 2 number 1 starters out there and, really get their rotation solved. Say the Dodgers go out there and solve their right field by bringing in Aaron Judge or center field. Do they move Rangers? Okay. For some reason, I thought Dodgers. I don't know why I thought Dodgers. But anyway. You live in Atlanta. That explains why you're familiar with all the Atlanta stuff. Yeah. I think pretty much the whole country followed them by osmosis for years because of their deal with TBS. Really wish they still had that type of a deal for another big league team. I know like the Yankees have their Yes Network and the Cubs pretty much work exclusively with WGN. But a cable network channel that exclusively covers one major league team made the Braves so much more popular than they ever would have been had they not been on TBS. Granted, going to the postseason for as many years as they did in a row, right when baseball was starting to come back into the forefront of everybody's minds, really does help as well. But that's probably the reason why I'm a Braves fan. Just from watching their games on TBS. Javi Lopez, Andres Galarraga, Ryan Klesko, of course the starters Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz. David Justice a hair before my time. Vinny Castillo, Rafael Furcal, Andrew Jones, Chipper Jones. Can't believe it took me that long to mention Chipper Jones. What was his name? Robert Fisk. He was one of the first basemen I really liked from the Braves. / catcher that never really worked out. Eddie Perez. Burkett. Was it Burkett John Burkett who played for the Rangers and the Braves? I'm trying to remember. Mike Hampton as well. Walt Weiss. John Rocker. Terry Mulholland. All right, but just kind of continuing with where we were at anyway. Say the Dodgers have that $100 million. Say they bring in a guy like, say they bring in Verlander and Judge. That doesn't leave them much money to go for a shortstop. They move over Gavin Lux, or they decide to flip Gavin Lux for a shortstop. Maybe you bring in a low-cost option for a year. But then they're going to have to solve some of their other issues with their prospects that they have. They'd need some more platoon options out there. They could always buy low in free agency. They're going to need to add some relief pitching. Say they flip Gavin Lux for one of their late inning relievers. If they make that happen, what could a deal like that look like? Lux is still very valuable. 4 years left to control. You don't really want to waste all that on a relief pitcher, but yeah, I was trying to remember. I thought Burkett was on the Braves. I just don't remember his time there. Kevin Millwood, who came over to the Rangers after his time with the Braves. Can't believe I didn't mention that one yet. That was one of the first big contracts the Rangers actually signed a free agent pitcher to. At the time, I think everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy money for a pitcher who's not an ace. It was 4 years, $55 million? Something like that. Of course, they made the big deal for Chan-Ho Park as well. That was horrible. The Esteban Loaiza trade for Michael Young obviously was great back then. But as far as Braves players, man, those were a lot of them back then. What was his name? Brett Boone. I remember Brett Boone. Played for the Mariners as well. I remember him for his days with the Braves, though, because again, I choose to not think of him as a Mariner, as a Rangers fan. Was Caminiti there for a year as well? I think Ken Caminiti was in Atlanta for a year. Javi Lopez was my second favorite catcher of all time. Not saying he's one of the best, but I'm saying for my era of catchers that I got to watch and see play the game, Pudge is still my number one. 2 would probably be Javi Lopez. One of the first ever offensive-minded catchers in the game. Joe Mauer is up there as well. Trying to think of other guys. What's his name? Leo Mazzoni, the pitching coach. I remember that one. I think he passed not too long ago, from what I remember. But yeah, I remember Millwood. I was the big signing for the Rangers back then when they were trying to invest in their starting pitching, and nobody believed a starting pitcher could work in Texas in the ballpark in Arlington. even with the the jet stream as they called it, everybody always would talk about how much of a hitter friendly park and the ballpark in Arlington was, and it was. If you got it up into a certain jet stream, that's why they called it the jet stream. You could get lazy fly balls to medium you know right center field to kind of carry all the way to the wall, and if you get a little bit more oomph on it, it's gone. But the way things would work, the air would come in one part of the stadium down the left field line, somewhere around there, and just kind of go right back around the stadium and right back out through right field. The jet stream, as they called it. But starting pitchers for years there would never really go there. They would come there at the end of their career. Nolan Ryan comes to mind. Kenny Rogers was there on again, off again for a couple of years. They had Kevin Brown, the former Dodgers great, who went on to the Yankees and those kinds of things, but he started his career with the Rangers. Going down a rabbit hole of baseball history for y'all there. But just in case y'all missed it anyway, the Angels have acquired outfielder Hunter Renfroe from the Milwaukee Brewers for a deal that includes 3 pitchers: Jason Junk, Elvis Peguero, and Adam Seminaris. Pretty much signaling the end of Joe Adell in LA. He no longer has a clear path to playing time, and they still may even bring in Mitch Haniger. They're still rumored to be in on his market. Got several of you guys watching with us right now. Let us know which team is your favorite. As we've been playing a little bit with this baseball trade values machine anyway, having a little bit of fun here on a Tuesday night. Got my voice back finally anyway after I lost it all day Friday. And wasn't very strong over the weekend. Was able to get a few videos out, but I couldn't keep my voice for more than a few minutes at a time. But today it's back for the most part, and so far so good. But while we play around with this machine anyway, let us know which team's your favorite. We'll play around with some trades here. We were talking about the Yankees earlier, about what they do if they lose Aaron Judge. We had a thought experiment about bringing in a star level production type player anyway, in Tatis Jr. if he gets his head out of his rear. What it would end up taking. We did some math on it, and essentially you basically take your 3 top prospects and yet another major league player like Loaiziga to be able to get the deal done, at least from terms of value. Not saying the Yankees would do it, but that's the kind of value it would take to get a star like that to go from San Diego to New York. Not saying either team would agree to it, but that's about the price of poker. Say the Yankees need to add another star. Say they go out in there and they're trying to convince the Angels that's their only way of rebounding from the loss of Judge. They have to get Ohtani. They have to get it done. There's nobody else the Yankees market will accept. Hal Steinbrenner's pounding on the desk of Brian Cashman every day. I need a replacement for Aaron Judge or else you're gone, etc., etc. What would it take to bring in Shohei Ohtani? Well, his value for next season for 1 year is 61. Remember, he is a starting pitcher. He also is a great slugger as well. The value he brings in 1 season is probably greater than any other player in Major League Baseball on both sides of both ends of the diamond anyway, starting pitching and hitting. So what would it take? Obviously, if you're the Yankees, you're not getting a shortstop back in the deal, so you don't want to give up a guy like Volpe in this type of a deal. For the Angels, this basically signals you're okay rebuilding, even though all these other moves that you've made signal that you're not. So I think this trade would have to be hefty for the Angels to consider it. So I think if you're not including Volpe, that might not get the deal done. But let's say the Yankees are somehow able to convince them to do the deal without Volpe. The deal would start with Peraza. You'd have to include Dominguez as well. and that still is short of the value from what baseball trade values would have it at. And I think its value would be even higher because the Angels, this would signal a turning point in their organization. So you're going to have to pay the piper on it. So say you, just to kind of sweeten the deal a little extra, you give a little bit higher level prospect, say like Pereira, something like that, where the trade clearly leans in the favor of the Angels for one season of Ohtani. Minor overpay, you might have to do something like that. But again, I'm not expecting that to happen. So say the Angels don't get that done, are not willing to talk about Ohtani, then where do you turn if you're the Yankees? Who's the next player that takes the heat off of Cashman? Hal Steinbrenner's breathing down your neck. Get me a star here right now. How could you lose Aaron Judge? Even though Hal Steinbrenner apparently has been negotiating with Aaron Judge as well. How could you do it? It's your fault, Cashman. What are you going to do to solve it? We had somebody mention earlier Acuna. Say Acuna wants out of the Braves. That's not happening. That's at all. But just to say what it would cost. Look at Acuna's value. 94.1. Say they lose Swanson in free agency. They're not going to want to tear their roster apart. But your deal would have to include your top 3 prospects. And even then, it's Acuna. That contract is ridiculously valuable for the Braves. Still no way they agree to that deal. Well, what else are we going to do? Well, let's go on down the list. What else would we try to go for? Say you try to sell Steinbrenner on the value of a guy like Yelich. Oh, wait, his value is so horrible it's not going to work for you. Oh, well, what else are we going to do? Maybe you say, hey, Hal, we're going to go for starting pitching. We'll bring in DeGrom. That doesn't solve our offense. What are you going to do? Find me a Judge replacement. You tell me where you see a Judge replacement on any of these teams that the Yankees could go out there and get. That's why the Yankees' position on Aaron Judge is so important. They have to get the deal done. Because there really is no real solution. Just looking at the top, Ohtani, I mean, the Angels are trying to convince him to stay. They're literally selling away pieces right now to bring in one-year stopgap options to try to make the postseason next season. Of course, the Rangers, if they add a couple of starting pitchers at the top, will have something to say about it. The Mariners, we already know, will have something to say about it, as will the Astros, and that's within their own division. The Astros, of course, what could they end up giving up? Well, they have the young piece in Pena, not moving him. Bregman's free agency is coming up, I believe. I believe his free agency is coming up soon, unless they already signed him. I can't remember if they signed him or not. Bregman's value, they say, is negative. I find that hard to believe. But they're not going to sell their young pieces anyway. They've got a very good system going. They're not going to trade you any big piece. And again, it's the Yankees and Stros. There's heat there. Bad blood. What exactly are the A's going to trade you? A catcher? You think Sean Murphy is the answer for Yankees fans for a replacement for Aaron Judge? Think again, buddy. The Blue Jays, you think the Blue Jays are going to help him out and trade him a star player? Not going to happen. We just talked about the Braves. They're not going to trade one of their great contracts that they have. That's the reason why they signed him. Brewers, you could convince me that they could make a deal for a Burns. He's been mentioned as another dark horse candidate to be traded. We just saw the Brewers trade away Hunter Renfroe. So maybe you say, hey, we'll invest heavy on starting pitching. Nobody will be able to get score any runs against us. We'll have Garrett Cole, DeGrom, and Burns. Yeah, but is your offense going to be able to do enough at that point then? They're already holding it together with basically, chewing gum and duct tape. Giancarlo Stanton certainly saw the protection of Judge in that lineup. Donaldson wasn't great last year, but saw the protection of Judge when he was in front. They were more willing to throw the ball to him. Now they can be a little bit more careful with those type of hitters. Pitch around him a little bit. And when that happens, they've been proven they're not exactly the same hitter they were. Cardinals, what exactly are the Cardinals going to give you to fill in the shoes of Aaron Judge? Top prospect in Gorman? You're telling me the Yankees fans are going to be happy with a rebuild centering around Volpe and Gordon? Of course, you're going to have to give up something to get Gorman. Not sure if that works for you either. Dylan Carlson, not exactly Aaron Judge in right field. Who could the Cubs give you? Nico Horner, that doesn't solve your problems. Diamondbacks pretty much have nothing except for their top prospects. Dodgers, the Dodgers take advantages of of the big market teams not being able to pay their tax bill and just say, hey, we'll take on those bad contracts and make do with them. But what exactly are you going to get out of here? A catcher in Will Smith? No way the Dodgers give up him. The Giants, they're the team that stole Aaron Judge. You saying you're going to take away one of the other pieces on that roster? I don't think so. Guardians, now maybe this is the place you say, hey, you just signed the long-term deal with Ramirez. I know it looks like he wants to be a member of the Guardians team for life. You're comfortable there, but maybe you try to pry away a Bieber and again try to outpitch everybody. Don't think it'll work, but that's kind of an interesting argument there for Ramirez. Mariners, they're trying to win. They're not trying to sell away a piece. Marlins, we talked about you could go out there and get Lopez. Again, out pitching everybody, but maybe you make the big move and go get Alcantara. That doesn't really do anything for you long term, especially for the lineup. Mets, they're not going to trade you a big marquee piece. They're not going to trade you Pete Alonso or Francisco Lindor. Nationals, they have a very young team. Look at all these controllable years on this young team. They're going to be set for a while if those pieces hit. That's all I'm going to say. Orioles, they're just about to hit the contention level of their title window. Rutschman looks like an MVP candidate. You think they're going to trade you their best piece? I don't think so. Padres, like we mentioned, could go out. You could make an argument for Fernando Tatis Jr. if you're a Yankees fan, if you lose Aaron Judge. Who else are you going to get off this roster? Nobody else has that level of impact. And they ain't going to give up Machado, Soto, or anybody else. The Phillies, they were just in the World Series. They're trying to add to this team, not subtract. Pirates, maybe you go out there and get Brian Reynolds. You're telling me the Yankees fan base is okay with Brian Reynolds as an alternative to Aaron Judge? I don't think so. Rangers, say they're the team that adds Aaron Judge or adds a couple of starting pitching. They're trying to compete for a spot in the postseason next year. They're not going to give you one of their top-end pieces. You're saying Adolis Garcia is going to be the piece that replaces Aaron Judge? Don't think so either. Tampa Bay Rays, Wander Franco? I don't think so. The Red Sox? When do you think the Red Sox are ever going to trade an impact piece to save the Yankees? I mean, there is conversation around Devers, but why the heck would the Red Sox trade Devers to the Yankees only to kill him for 10 years? That's not happening. The Reds, who do they have to give up? Who's ready to be a star-level player the size of Judge? Rockies? I mean, you could make an argument that they've retooled their roster very nicely, but a lot of these pieces on the roster aren't ready to take that spotlight. Rogers, former top 5 pick, good player, nowhere near the value of anything worth a star-level player, let alone an Aaron Judge. Nobody else is ready there. The Royals, I mean, come on, you're talking about prospects here. Tigers, you're going to trade for Riley Green? The whole future of the Tigers organization? I don't think so. Scoball, you could make an argument to go for pitching, but again, that doesn't solve the Aaron Judge problem. Twins, Buxton, maybe. But again, the Twins are trying to compete for a wild card spot for the division. They were in the lead in the division up until, I think it was mid-August, and then just kind of fell off a cliff right at the trade deadline. couldn't get out of their own way, made some nice moves at the deadline, and just couldn't get anything going offensively. So maybe make the argument for Buxton, maybe make the deal there. It's going to cost you a lot, even though his value is only 13. Trust me, the Twins certainly view him considerably higher because he's on a very cheap contract. Even with the injury issues, when he's on, he's good. And the White Sox. Now, they're a team that could shake things up. Say you make an argument for Luis Robert. Very good player, but he's not Aaron Judge either. I don't think you'd be able to get him anyway. Anderson, they're not trading away Anderson. I think he's 1 year left on his deal, maybe 2. I think he's got 1. Dylan Cease going to try to outpitch everybody and get the White Sox best pitcher. Not happening. So where's the solution for for those Yankee fans watching right now? There is not a real trade solution out there. And in free agency, who's the next best free agent hitter on the market? Shortstops? That's where their top prospects are. You're telling me you're going to block off those prospects by bringing in a shortstop? Okay. Well, then what do you do with Volpe? Flip him for a starter? And say, hey, the combination of Carlos Correa and whatever starting pitcher we bring in for Volpe is worth Aaron Judge. I don't think so. So for those of you Yankees fans who think, not all is lost if we lose Aaron Judge, think again. For those of you thinking that the Yankees might be okay without him, think again. It's not to say the Yankees are horrible, but he definitely makes that team so much better in so many different ways. Covers up so many of their deficiencies. I mean, he was first in 19 out of 20 major offensive categories in the American League. You take that out of that lineup, where exactly do the Yankees go to fill it? As we mentioned, Ohtani's probably the one piece out there that would probably be able to handle the cachet of a Judge, the impact of a Judge in New York. But again, the Angels are trying to compete this year. You might have to wait 1 year, and by that time, Cashman's already lost his job. It's a very important offseason in New York. On the other end of the spectrum, the teams that are chasing down Aaron Judge, the Giants and the Dodgers, two very different places as far as organizations. Dodgers have basically been the flag bearer in the NL West for almost a decade now. Have gotten very top-heavy in their lineup, injury-dependent in their starting staff, issues with depth that they never had before, both in lineup and in their rotation. They had a great closer for almost a decade in Kenley Jansen. Now they have question marks at the back end of their bullpen. Of course, they got rid of a whole bunch of salary, $100 million. They're going to have a lot of money to spend. They're going to get one of the top free agents out there. I imagine the most likely option for them is to end up with one of the top free agent shortstops, like a Bogarts, who I don't think is going to go back to Boston. I think Trevor Story takes over at short there. Or a Carlos Correa. And then they'd still have money to burn. They could add a starting pitcher because, again, that rotation is very thin, injury dependent. Bringing in a guy who just won the Cy Young and Justin Verlander seems like the best fit right now. But again, I think the Rangers are going to be right there at the very top with the best offer on the table for Verlander. Because I think the Dodgers are going to try to diversify their money a little bit. Even if they get Aaron Judge, say $45 million, at least $55 million to add to that rotation, lengthen out that lineup, solve that bullpen, add a shortstop. Let's just look at some of the money on the Dodgers roster anyway. Let me get that pulled up for you guys. There we go. Well, still not the table I was looking for. Let's use the multi-year, I guess. They switched it up in about 2 years ago, and I'm still getting used to their new site. Every single time I use it, it's weird to me nowadays. But just looking at the money, where the Dodgers have it kind of broken down for you guys. There it is. They had this part of the where the contracts were for players anyway above this last section. They changed the way to where this is now at top instead of down below. Where's the total? Total payroll 130. So just looking at their salary commitments, they're only really paying a few guys. They retained Chris Taylor, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and of course the suspended money of Trevor Bauer. Max Muncy's making a little bit. Got to imagine he's going to be cut next year if he doesn't turn it around. Had a little bit better second half last year anyway. But make sure you guys keep your eyes open on what they could end up doing. But again, they have $130 million committed to next year. That means they could easily add about $100 million in payroll and still stay underneath that luxury tax. Or close to it anyway. I don't think they're afraid to go above that luxury tax if they'd have to. But they have some holes on that roster. If they bring in a guy like Aaron Judge, they still could solve those issues with about $55 million left over. Remember, the Rangers were expected to add between $60 and $75 million. Well, even after bringing in a guy like Aaron Judge, the Dodgers should still have very similar money to go after guys like Verlander, DeGrom, any one of the shortstops out there, whoever they really want to go after. Just check in, make sure no other trades have happened while we've been on the air. As we mentioned, the Angels did acquire Hunter Renfroe. Again, the Angels are trying to convince Shohei Ohtani that this is the place to be, that they're going to compete for playoffs, etc. Ohtani, when he came over, wanted to go to an organization that was going to be in the playoffs every year, that was going to compete against the best on the biggest, brightest stages of them all. And he thought going to LA, where they invest in their players, they try to make that team better every year. They have the best player in Major League Baseball, arguably, in Mike Trout, and he thought he was going into a great situation. How many times have we seen him in the playoffs? It just hasn't worked. So we'll see if this year's re-rack in LA works, but to me it just looks like more of the same. I mean, the year they brought in Anthony Rendon, everybody was like, oh, all right, the offense is really going. Wait, weren't we supposed to spend that money on a starting pitcher? Yeah, but we couldn't get anybody, so we thought we'd invest it differently. Oh, okay, this will work. Yeah, let's get him. Didn't work. All the way back to the Albert Pujols money, the Josh Hamilton money, Justin Upton. None of those deals really worked out at all. C.J. Wilson. They've tried throwing money at this problem for over a decade now, and nothing's really worked. We'll see if they do that this year. They spent a little bit of money on Anderson, and they didn't really back up the Brinks truck to him, so they did it a little bit more conservatively, which is good for those of you who are who are Angels fans, that they're at least tempering their expectations at least a little bit from the outside, it seems. Just want to check and see if anything's happened on Twitter. Okay, the reason why I'm laughing, okay, this is the tweet from Mark Feinsand saying the Angels have traded, Jason Funk, Elvis Peguero, and left-handed pitcher Adam Seminaris to the Brewers for outfielder Hunter Renfroe. Anthony Castrovins of MLB.com said the Angels news release went to my junk mail. Love this from Mark Feinsand. In case you guys aren't sure who that is, I can't remember his name, but he's from The Office anyway, but just the eye roll says everything you need to know. Oh, man. That's hilarious. Morosi, one of the most aggressive teams in baseball this winter, the Angels. He is correct. Usually in the AL West, you can count on Jerry Dipoto being the most active, but no, so far it's the Angels. Don't worry, Dipoto will catch up. He's already got two trades under his belt. Lewis, sending him out, bringing in Hummel, and then the trade for Teoscar Hernandez. There'll be more, don't worry. Dipoto will get it together. But let's go ahead and just one more thing. Just wanted to go over the Giants payroll situation and where their roster is at. Pull that up for you guys here. They're the other team that's interested in Aaron Judge. They're only at $95 million. They could conceivably add significant payroll as well, just like the Dodgers. Maybe not nearly as high as they would go, but say they bring in Judge, they could still add a shortstop at the top of the market anyway, and like Correa or a Bogarts, and then still add a back-end starter and maybe a bullpen piece like Jansen, and then roll with that lineup out there. Maybe Mitch Haniger still signs there, and they roll with an outfield of Haniger, Judge, and Peterson for the most part. But look at this outfield spending. Even after that qualifying offer, it's only at $25 million in the outfield. Cheap starting pitching will keep that money down. They don't really spend any money at all right now for their bullpen. A lot of homegrown guys back there. If you guys are curious to follow me on Twitter, make sure you look us up at UpsideSN. You can look at the very bottom of the screen down there. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube as well. It really does help us out. We're at 920-ish range of subscribers right now, so really would appreciate the help. We're getting really close to our goal of 1,000, but about to sign off here. As I mentioned, Thanksgiving week, there aren't really too many transactions. A couple of minor trades that we've seen, Gio Urshela, the Hunter Renfroe one that we saw while we were on the air, but really appreciate all the support. Again, if you guys want to follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN or on YouTube at the Upside Sports Network here, make sure you at the bottom of your screen here anyway, hit that subscribe button, the like button as well. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you guys for making this so much fun over the last year. And this is only the beginning. Getting very close to our 1-year anniversary here on YouTube. I believe that is the 27th or 28th, I can't remember, but which day it actually posted the video. But thank you guys so much for all the support, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. We'll be back with our dailies now that I have my voice back in full throat, and be prepared for, again, more videos coming out in the next couple days. Got a couple NBA videos, Lakers video coming out tomorrow about Miles Bridges. There was an update in his legal situation, so we might see some movement on that front as well. The SGA video that I put out last week, in case you're not unfamiliar with basketball, you don't know what SGA stands for, that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's a player for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Got amazing response to that video. Over, I think, 1,900 views on that video in like an hour and a half. It was great. So we'll probably do some more videos along those lines, trade candidates in the NBA as well. Now that the NBA trade season is starting to percolate with Christmas coming around the corner in the next month anyway, trade deadline in February, I believe. So we'll see how things go, but really appreciate all the support, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Y'all have a good one.